As a marketer, one of the things that I am tussling with and concerned about, I guess you could say, is with the emergence of AI, how that is going to impact on customer experience, user experience, personalization, and all those things that make us as marketers human in the way that we communicate with others. So I'm joined today by somebody who knows a thing or two about generative AI, and we're going to go deep into the possibilities, the future of customer experience, and more, I'm sure, as we go into this conversation. I'm joined by Max Gutsche, who is the founder of Unifire. And this is going to be a super interesting conversation because Max is really at the forefront of a lot of the thinking and a lot of the application of generative AI in customer experience. So we're going to find out a lot more about Unifire. But I want to go deep into this whole concept and this whole challenge that marketers are currently playing with, which is how do you keep a high quality customer or user experience as you start to integrate generative AI into your marketing plans. So welcome to the podcast, Max.
Pleasure to be here. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's exciting and it's also kind of scary at the same time because I think for a lot of marketers, it's uncharted territory. It's really an unknown. And I think for a lot of us, and I think me included, we're eager to get started. We're keen to see what we can do, but there is a lot of talk about automation. Automation for me seems to be kind of hooked into this kind of AI debate and this AI conversation. And it isn't always helpful because as soon as you put automation in there, to me as a marketer, it potentially takes away from the kind of the nuances and the humanness of customer experience. I would challenge. Well, what do you think about that in the broadest sense? Am I right, or have I got something to learn here?
I would say in 90% of the cases you're right, because like for me, and which is also something I find quite odd, is that this entire movement now is about usually either automation or generating a lot of things out of thin air. So you have like writing tools that can write you 100 blog posts. You have SEO tools, that can create you 1,000 SEO optimized blog posts for all your keywords. And mostly, I think you would say you're completely right. But there's also some people, and I hope like I'm included there with like Unifire, that we are trying not to create even more out of thin air, even more generic content, even more things we can throw on the wall, throw on our customers, but that we can use this technology to not just create more, but also just extend and scale things that creative people are already doing. And obviously, since this is also a very versatile technology, you can also use it to react to user feedback and input. And it doesn't matter if it's in marketing, it could be in sales, in education. So like there's this whole notion of like hyper personalization at scale. So I think there's some good nuanced thinking in how we scale creativity. But at the moment, all the VC money is going in more. And VCs are like with the Web3 hype and bubble and metaverses, and so VCs are often wrong and very wrong. So I assume a lot of the money that's just going into more and more content, that it might not be an indicator of actual success. That's what I'm like trying to say.
Yeah, and that one is a really key point, I think, for a lot of us, because there is this big hype bubble, and understandably, it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunity, and with opportunity, as you quite correctly say, comes, the money. So the dollars chase the excitement and the opportunity, because everybody's looking for the next big thing, and they want to hook into that. I mean, Unifier, it really isn't the first time you've been in this space at all, is it? I mean, how long have you been sort of building technologies, of this kind of nature and been involved in technology startup?
Probably around 6 or 7 years. So that was really when I had my first idea, and I was like, okay, I've got to build this. And so yeah, I've seen a couple of hype cycles and technology crazes, and Yeah, usually, and like some of the smartest VCs and founders, they always say like you have to be right, but it has to be an unconventional or unobvious kind of right. So usually 90% of the money just goes somewhere, and but the real money is where 10%, where the 10% is. So yeah, in the last 6 or 7 years, usually when everybody says like, okay, this is going to be the next big thing, it usually won't be, because like people did not predict Uber or Airbnb or so. So I hope that I'm on the right side of this like counter positioning of, okay, let's not do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important one, isn't it? Because with all of the chasing of the money, and I'm sure there are a lot of founders and startup entrepreneurs who are thinking, okay, great, I just need an idea. I can get the cash. I can then go and have some fun and play. And we'll kind of chance whether we've got this right. Yours is a much more considered. I've experienced the platform. I've looked at it, and sort of seen where you're going with this. And as a marketer, who again, like you, have been through sort of a number of different cycles through my career, it is relatively easy to spot the ones and you think, hold on, yeah, I can see why you've done this, but there's nothing really new about this. And yeah, I can't really sort of buy into it because I don't really see that it has longevity. I mean, where did you come up with the idea for Unify? Because it is a little bit different, isn't it? This is the thing. It's cutting through and giving a real solution here. I think, particularly in a marketing sense, there's something really quite targeted and focused here. Where was the idea from?
Yeah, so it was basically solving my own problem. I started as a tech founder and then never had really distribution for any of my products. So I was like, okay, man, you gotta be on social media, and started that like 2.5 years ago, with mainly LinkedIn, and added some podcasts, online courses, webinars, really started enjoying it. And then I always had this amazing content just in front of mine. I interviewed an important VC, I had an online course of like 5, 6 sessions, and this content was just like so dense and information dense, lots of insight, and I never really did anything with it, because like for a Gary Vee, it's pretty easy to say like repurpose your content, but if you have 10 people doing that for you, okay, of course that's easy. So I was like, how do I get the information out of these talks that I can post again on social media, maybe create a newsletter out, really helping people like me who are like creators that make a living from content and need to make content to make more money, or like just even sustain the business. And that's how we basically started with the whole hype. And we were like, okay, let's try out the API from ChatGPT, GPT-3, and let's transcribe our tool and let's see if it can write some form of like social posts out of our content. And yeah, it began like a bit of playing around, and we were like, hey, I think this could be a SaaS, because many people are super overwhelmed with like 50 tools a day and 50 prompts they need to learn. And now it's pretty sophisticated. It writes, for example, a 7,000 words blog post from your 1 hour podcast. So, it's getting there.
Yeah, and then when it's at this kind of level, and it is the automation, because we need to bring that word into it again, but it's automation on something that has value, something that you've already created, and as you say, it was kind of value dense. I think that was the phrase you used, and I love that. That is really, as a marketer, that is. It's almost like there's the core, there's the center of everything that we have that we need to offer out. But if there's a simple way like Unify to be able to then distribute that through multiple different channels in a way that actually talks the language and the style of that channel, in terms of the formatting and the kind of the nuanced sort of tone of voice, if you like, to me that saves so much time, but doesn't actually deteriorate from the quality of the content, because you're working from core base content there, aren't you? That then gets, I guess, split up, cut into various kind of forms. But then there's something, again, if you're looking at a 7,000 sort of word blog there from an hour's podcast or interview, I mean, that's incredible, because then it's actually adding value on top of the existing value. Is that kind of a way of interpreting this, that it's building on it, so you actually get even more at the other end?
So we're trying to, at the moment, so these language models, what we learned is in the beginning, the first 50%, a bit of prompting, that's the easy stuff. Where it gets really interesting is fine tuning and really keeping the AI on our content, because what I really don't want in my blog post is like a paragraph where the AI just adds something I never really talked about. So it's allowed to improve my writing, to improve the way I present my information, but not adding anything that's not relevant. So we are trying to really, the AI should format your content into different pieces, but stay in the mental models frameworks you and I create. That's really important. And that now we have a functionality where you can upload a blog post of you, for example, so it learns your tone, your lexical features, your sentence structures, what kind of words you're using. So really keeping you as you in all of these formats. That's like our biggest thing for now. In the future, I also find it quite intense to be on social media. So it doesn't, like, if you have great content, amazing, deep, amazing insight, it's not enough. So usually now you need templates from the best creators and even really good at hook writing and stuff. So we are trying to train some little agents here that, can, for example, that are trained on hooks. So we have a few hooks databases from big creators. And so we want to take your content, never deviate from that content, but put it into the best format so that it's a bit enhanced to perform better on social media. So that's a bit like the vision in the next 6 weeks. But yeah, I think you got that quite right.
Yeah, and it's so good because I think, people listening to this, some will be entrepreneurs, business startups, looking for guidance and advice. A fair proportion, though, of the listeners to this podcast are marketers who work for businesses and brands, small, medium, and large. And I'm particularly, as you're describing that, thinking of the big challenge that a large brand marketer would have, which would be, but we have brand guidelines. And one of the biggest challenges we have as a marketer with brand guidelines, where we're kind of playing within this kind of quite tight sort of framework of what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say. The fact that you're training your generative AI there with Unifire to kind of understand that tone of voice and that style and the brand permission, I guess, to be able to say or not say certain things. And it's lovely to hear that, you're not allowing it to deviate outside into, hey, just because I can, I throw this paragraph in because somebody else has used it and it's going to make it look bigger and the word count increases, but actually I'm not really that bothered. It's outside of your brand guidelines. This feels so much more manageable and controllable. It feels like this is the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle that I think for me allows me then to sort of feel much more confident that this is going to be something that allows personalization and customization and kind of keeps it more human, because it's all about me and the content I put in. It's not just this random ChatGPT version of the world. I love that. That feels so much more appropriate and powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet, obviously, at the vision we want it to be. But yeah, I mean, I think there's enough content out, and there's like Jay Klaus. He has this creator science podcast, and somewhere on LinkedIn he was just commenting under another big creator, and he said really, like, you just got to find one message that resonates, and then 101 ways to hammer it home, or something like this. And this is really that, I was like, this should be the slogan of our software as well, because it's just, Gary Vee, he talks about the same things for 10 years, right? In his own unique tone and voice. And so you don't necessarily have to sit down every day to try to come up with something original, right? It's like, once you found your message, scale that everywhere. And it could be like, some of our clients are economists, right? It could be really dense technical content, but it's still your insights. And this would be, I would love to see that in like 6 months, where someone just upload something, it's their tone of voice, and like the stress just goes away. But the creativity and the insights and that brilliance is just scaled everywhere, and like they don't have to stress and like worry too much that their business is dependent on the 20 hours of content creation they have to put in every week. That would be amazing.
You're really helping me here, Max, to really understand this definition of automation. As I said right at the start of this podcast, is that has been for, well, I guess probably the last 18 months, maybe one of my biggest concerns over this. I've remembered marketing before the internet, so I'm that old, and so through that time, I've really kind of sort of seen, obviously, what we define as marketing change and flow. And so I've seen many trends over the years and watched with fascination how those things impact on, how we communicate with customers and stakeholders and partners. But this feels different. The way that you've just described that this is kind of automation, but with a human center. It feels different. I'd not looked at it. This for me in this conversation now is a real shift for where my mindset is going with automation. I'm kind of almost welcoming it now. So I really thank you for this, because this is a whole different kind of angle really for me to take. And I was really keen to talk to you, because I know that one of the topics that you're very keen about is user experience in this new age. And so we kind of need to, I guess, talk about that in a minute. But I think the biggest concern I had was, but how is Max going to do this? Because with automation comes this distancing away from the customer, because all you're doing is just putting some tech or a tech stack in between you and the customer and just giving it the permission to deal with the customer. And to me, that was what automation was. But the way you've now defined it, which is, no, you stay true to the core of your messages, and you're using generative AI to communicate and distribute that at scale. And I love the Gary Vee analogy there, because that is exactly what he's doing. But the core of the message and the root of it, so actually what the customer's experiencing, is still going to be very high quality and still personal to you. I mean, do you see this whole thing as being, because it feels like it is going to be a much better way of generating a user or customer experience, because it feels that it kind of keeps the consistency there, whereas humans, we're very fickle, aren't we? Depending on what mood we're in the morning, how the hormones are flowing, whatever's going on in the state of the world. Generative AI can be much more controlled and predictable and sustainable, consistent, can't it?
Yeah, so I always have this like very simple framework, which means like, so your user experience, it has the risk. There's a risk with generative AI in user experience, and a massive opportunity. So you always have, with any system you have, there's an input, because it's essentially, I put in some content, you put in some information, some data. There's a model in the middle, and that's a black box where we can't really figure out what's going on in there, and then you get something out. And at all of these levels, there could be, there could be a failure. Maybe we upload a podcast or a webinar to my platform, and it's bad audio quality. It's very weirdly structured. The language model doesn't get it, and then at the end we get rubbish out of it. Complete user experience fail, right? Absolutely clear. And multiple ways that this could go wrong. But also, it's a massive chance. So I have another really cool example I have to tell you. It's a German startup in education, and they personalize educational material to what you're interested in. So you could learn Spanish and say like, okay, I can't deal with like, okay, we're going to Madrid and we're going to go to a cafe and we order something and I'm already bored, right? I could say, okay, let's take my Spanish classes and put tech and AI inside. And like the vocabulary and topics I also want to talk about with Spanish people to explain what I'm doing, right? And this is such a better customer experience. Because people, like little kids in school, they're like, hey, I'm super passionate about Minecraft. Let's learn Spanish with Minecraft. So this input dimension is really amazing with generative AI, because they can now say, I want my content personalized at scale to me. And obviously, if you're interested in customer experience, that's going to be so amazing, because it's not going to be, okay, we have like 30 worksheets and they're all the same, but we have 30 workshop sheets that we can personalize to a crazy level, with these technologies. And I think that's pretty insane. And it works already. It's not like a wild vision.
Wow. And this is something that I think, more and more of us within the marketing sector really need to be kind of exploring and absorbing, because I wasn't aware that actually at that kind of level of personalization was possible right here, right now. I know a lot of people talk about it and say, look, in the future, we're going to be able to do, but if that is possible now, it just, and everybody really listen to what Max is describing here, because this is something really profound in terms of the way that, we can have literally one-to-one communication, even if you have 1,000, 10,000 customers. Because we're working at scale here with generative AI, this can do that level of personalization at that kind of scale, because it's the black box in between us that is allowing that sense of understanding of what, the preferences of the customer are, and then returning that to them. So it's no additional kind of resource really from our perspective as business owners, is it? Because the black box is doing all the work. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. It's a rethinking, isn't it, of just the way that we can communicate. We're no longer restrained by our own resources, and we don't have to have 10,000 people here serving those 10,000 customers. You can probably have one or two, and as long as the scripting and the briefing is right. Am I being too simple here? Is it more complicated than that?
It's definitely more complicated, because the model is always going to be in the middle. You would also need the input, the input data, the information, or asking the customer what they are, for example. But for example, our website, sometimes we use conference talks, and when ran them through Unifire. Sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's someone just sort of saying like, okay, I can't really deal with writing an article anymore, so I just talk into a mic and then uploading it. So ideally, our website in the future changes when they know, oh, this guy has a conference. So maybe we can get some contextual data from LinkedIn that says like, hey, the guy has a large conference. Change the website to showing him conference use cases and how we can basically take his 30 conference talks and put out an ebook or something. So we gotta find some way to get that input data, or even asking customers like, hey, what are you? Maybe in a funnel. Hey, I'm a conference, I'm a conference host or something. And then it's going to be really, I think, having that kind of data or that interaction with the customer allows us then to tell the model with some prompting, with some, language model architecture to say, this is the content we need. This is the sentence. These are the copies we need. So there's some tools as well that in the landing page space that try to figure out, is this a corporate customer, and then change the overall tone of the copy to a more corporate customer instead of a startup. So that there's already don't want to mumble too long, but it's a bit more complicated, but we can already see where this is going.
So there's still going to be a lot of listening from the marketer or the business owner's perspective. They still need to listen, capture data, capture the understanding of actually who am I talking to. But it isn't just general data like kind of name, date of birth, email address and stuff. It is much more detailed to be able to then play back using the AI, play back the experience. So it's kind of almost like the marketing role becomes really, really pure. It's part of the conversation. We become facilitators, really, don't we? Because we're kind of asking the customer for, specific pieces of data which allow us then to serve back what that customer we know is going to want and need in the experience we can give. So data capture is going to be really key. We then allow the AI to kind of generate all of that kind of output, and then at the end of it, then we need to then, I guess, listen again later in that journey to kind of what the customers were saying about the experience, because this is going to be a continual cycle, isn't it? Because whilst the AI is learning all through this, we need to learn as well as marketers, don't we?
Absolutely. I think, yeah. It's an interesting thought. I didn't really think about it before, but marketers will even, I know lots of product managers, marketers, user experience designers that talk way too little with the customer, and they don't do enough research. I think research going to be much more important than ever, because if I don't do research, I have no idea what kind of input I need, where they come from, are they the right people, is this my right customer persona? And then in the language model, that's not necessarily something where I need the customer, but at the output, I will need to reevaluate if what I did at the input level makes any sense. So ideally, yes, I would say marketers will use the automation to do a lot of things at scale, but the human parts of user research, analytics, reevaluating, tones, brand styles, I think that's going to be much more important. Yeah.
We're redefining
really
here
cool
now.
learning, I just said.
Yeah, we're redefining the role of the marketer in the future. I thought we were going to be talking about customer experience here, but actually what we're talking about is how we as humans embrace generative AI and change the role that we used to have to this new kind of model with this AI kind of by our side, helping us to do what we do more effectively, which is kind of really interesting, isn't it? Because at the front end of the customer journey, as you've described it, the Gary Vee example there of, repurposing and reusing the information, that's kind of at the awareness building stage of the customer's experience. And then as they come deeper in, I love your analogy of the, customizing the course based on their preferences to make it much more relevant. That's a really neat kind of way of thinking about this. And I'm going to give that a lot more thought, I think, myself. And then once they come into what we might term the retention phase, so they've now become a customer, they're already bought in, they purchased the product or the service, then the generative AI starts to get really interesting, because could we be using it then at that phase to, on the longer term, start to build loyalty? Would you see generative AI kind of being there, the loyalty, sort of, building that long-term relationship with the customer? Because it would feel like it would work quite nicely there too.
Absolutely. Especially, anything that's information can be, transformed in any way with generative AI. So I can imagine they come into my product. I understand, for example, I don't know, in Unify, okay, guys is has 8,000 followers, mainly on LinkedIn. Is there any way I can use my data, my expertise to give him more guidelines? First of all, probably in the beginning, information to make him more successful on LinkedIn. Maybe we do webinars, align our event strategy, because we see 70% are solopreneurs and they all do LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay, if my people are more successful on LinkedIn, they're more successful with my product. And, since I have this automation at scale, I can send them more information. I could send them a little email course. I could host events that are then repurposed again. So obviously, it can go even crazier, that in the app you have moving and dynamic parts that, maybe the software even changes because you can personalize it, and then you show some features, and you should, you cut out some noise here, highlight some LinkedIn features there. So I think there's at all stages of the funnel, there's a possibility to do this. Yeah.
And with the lack of third-party cookies sort of going forward, which is something that a lot of marketers have grown up, the whole kind of remarketing thing, I think we're just redefining customer engagement in its broadest sense here. The finding of customers, the engaging of the customers, the taking them on the journey, the conversion, and then the retaining of them. It feels like this now. This is the answer to what I think a lot of people were thinking. Okay, first party cookies, first party data rather. I've got to be gathering data, but I don't really know why. I've got to be looking for sort of customer information, and I'm going to put it into my CRM or my database, but I don't really know why, and I don't know how I'm going to use it. I think what we're talking about here is this is how you are going to use it. pure 100% thoroughbred personalization. That is what you're going to be able to do here. So it's about listening and thinking of the right kind of data. What do you need to be able to personalize that experience? What's relevant to work in with the kind of product or service that you are looking to offer? And it could, I'm guessing here, Max, I mean, it could be that organizations, once they start to realize the kind of data that their customers are willing to give them to be able to do this, to feed the AI box, that they might actually be able to, as a business, be able to pivot, because they might uncover, as they go through this, different things which open up different types of services that they could offer. Do you think that might be happening as well? Because that would be really exciting, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So what I obviously as a product person always do is I look at behavioral analytics, and I think we all know that we come to an established product, HubSpot. They have a knowledge database. I think I could spend a year just reading through that, right? And there's a chatbot, and then there's so many moving things and moving parts, and I'm already overwhelmed, right? Maybe, and that would be the first step. It seems like, okay, through certain behavioral steps, it knows exactly what I need in the next steps. Makes it much simpler. I think that's a fairly obvious one. But what we can also do, and this is, I think, what you were saying, is like with, for example, autonomous AI agents, like a bit like micro programs or micro software, we could really change the experience for every single person. So maybe you, Neil, come on my app and you're really great at writing hooks, but maybe you're not as great in editing the text. So I could say, okay, Neil's great at hooks. Like, don't give him the hook writer; it's gonna fail at him. But maybe we give him the editing, the coach that helps him to edit a bit better. And so I have like a tool, maybe my own little back-end toolbox of like little AI agents that I can use based on behavioral data. So now it gets a bit crazy, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be much easier to get data from users as well, because it's now not like I'm going to sell you data to the next highest bidding person, but I'm like, if you give me data, I'm going to give you a much better experience, which I think it's a much easier sell, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, and it's really interesting, isn't it? That whole kind of opportunity to fill in those spaces, because I mean, none of us are perfect. None of us have every preference to be doing every part of our role, or even looking outside of our roles. Again, as entrepreneurs or as marketers, there are certain things where we're skilled at and certain things that we have as preference. And maybe then, as you say, there's an opportunity here for using the AI to kind of fill in those gaps where, I just need a little bit more help. It was interesting actually, because I'm much better at the editing than I am the hooks. But anyway, that's. But maybe the AI will know that once I start using it. So this is the thing, because it can change too, can't it? I mean, that's the lovely thing about generative AI, is that it's not a fixed point in time, because with machine learning, it will improve over time. So if I then change to become actually slightly better at hooks, but it is the origination of the original idea that becomes my challenge, it'll start to learn that, hey, Neil's not actually that good at that bit either. But that's changed, because he used to be quite good, but now relative to the editing, he's not so good. So this is going to adapt by itself over time, isn't it? Because this is super intelligence, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about hyper personalization at scale. I think when I try to explain people what's possible with that technology, I'm always saying like, okay, it's like, obviously it's your unique methodology and processes that's clear. Like what we are really good at, we can kind of reflect that and represent that in AI. There's obviously hyper personalization at scale, and then there's like universally accessible intelligence. So for example, on my Notion, which I use for to-do lists and project management, it's a nice piece of software, but it's dumb. It doesn't know anything, right? It really is beautiful, amazing user experience. But if I'm thinking now of Notion and Asana, who have like decades of content and knowledge and data on project management, I assume in the near future, and we also already see that with like Men, which is like a Notion competitor, they should know, okay, Max, maybe the project plan you made is absolutely rubbish. Like, it makes no sense. These two goals you have are conflicting. That budget's never going to work, and you have only the two developers. Please cut your tickets in half. So ideally, my project management tool evolves and has now the intelligence of a project manager to support me. Because like, humans are so dysfunctional in, for example, imagining how long something takes. We do lots of assumptions in our project, and for me, 50% of the stuff I'm starting is wrong. Even now, like, I'm always like surprised how bad I am at this stuff, and everyone is, right? So really, like, these language models read everything and know everything about project management help me in my tool, turn my tool not into just a nice little canvas, but as a a little project management coach that's always there to say, like, Max, here, I don't think that's going to work. I think that's amazing.
It is, and they become part of the team then, these tools, don't they, these platforms, because you can really see them as a valuable resource, and they're not that sort of dumb thing that you look at on a web browser and it's kind of just there. It is something that's going to really be adding to the resources that you have in a true sense, because these will feel like having another business person or partner or developer next to you, because they're actually physically doing things that are adding some really, really high value. It's just so exciting, this stuff. I'm almost like shifting around in my seat thinking, I want this now. It's so great. And I'm sure, actually, because we've drip fed into the conversation Unifire quite a few times here, but we haven't really said very much about it. Would you like people to be testing out Unifire? I'm guessing the answer is yes, please, very much.
Absolutely. We are absolutely in a transition phase at the moment, where we now have the tone trainer that's coming out probably this week or next week. And absolutely. I mean, people can definitely try it out. It's also, we try to make it as super easy and as easily usable as possible, because like, you don't need to know prompting. It's basically an upload. You could upload your favorite YouTube video or YouTube video from your company or whatever you're doing, a podcast, a webinar, and then you're going to see auto-generated the LinkedIn post, the blog post, and so on. So, and obviously, especially for marketers and content writers, they're really good at telling me, okay, Max, like, that hook, that tone, really that ultra specific feedback. That's always what I'm looking for. And, really strong and critical feedback is the best. That helps us a lot.
So I think there's a two-part process to this. Everyone listening, is when you go to Unifire.ai, and I'll put the link to that, and also to Max's LinkedIn, because I know Max is very keen to connect directly with you if you're using the platform. So I'll put that into the description below, so that you can give lots of feedback and get into conversation and find out more about Max and Max's journey. But I think for me, one of the key things there is that for all of us, whether we're developers, whether we're founders, whether we're marketers, is that we're in this journey together. Nobody has yet created, because it's an evolving journey, the final version of any of these things. So you get a chance, if you're contributing and giving Max feedback here, you're getting a chance to shape the future of this whole space, this whole generative AI space. Max is obviously very, very capable and very experienced, founder of these kinds of platforms. So, you're going to be in safe hands working with Max. So I would very much encourage you to do that. And let's create together, because, as a marketer, if you've got an idea, if you've got a sort of a new feature, or would like to suggest something to Max, I'm sure, Max, you'd be very, very willing to hear that, particularly from, people who have, experimented maybe with other AIs and maybe not had quite the success they'd be looking for. But if they come to you with really good, innovative ideas, I'm guessing that would also be very welcome.
Yeah, and absolutely. I use all AI tools, but I'm very, very happy and very keen on just sitting down also with people and talking to them directly. So, because this is the best thing I can do all the time, is just talking to people, being really that researcher that can then enable the scalability. That's really, it's also the coolest part, because I'm just like meeting people from, yesterday I met with an agency, from somewhere in Illinois. Like every day I'm talking to people that are just from all over the world, and I get unique insights into their work. So yeah, would love to do it. Like there's always time for real interaction. Yeah.
No, it's great. And I just really want to say, real heartfelt thank you for clarifying what AI can do for automation without losing that human element of it. I think, this for me is a game changer, this conversation. So really, really thank you very much, Max, because I'm seeing it in a different light personally now. I wasn't expecting this. I thought, I know what this conversation is going to go like, but I had no idea. So I swallow humble pie here because you've taught me something very new here. So I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much for your time today, Max.
Absolute pleasure.